This is the Red Podcast.
This is episode number 128. We're talking about successfully working with your spouse. I've talked to dozens of spouses who are successfully working together. I'm going to share their secrets on this episode.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money, work less, and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
Years ago, I was living in Lexington, Kentucky, and my dog got me in trouble with the cops.
Badass dog.
It's a bad situation. I was in my apartment in this duplex. Actually, it was a fourplex I was living in. It was a house turned into apartments. And I had come in the driveway, and I had parked on one side of the driveway. Apparently, that was in the neighbor's yard. I didn't know this, but they didn't like it. They called the cops on me that I'd parked in their yard. And I was up in my apartment, and I was in the bathroom, which was on the far end of the apartment. It was a big apartment. And the cop comes up and knocks on my door. I had no idea. I did not hear this. I was running the water in the bathroom, getting ready to leave, didn't hear it. And my dog goes up to the door, and he doesn't bark at that time. I had gotten him pretty recently. He was from the shelter. He had some issues, so he didn't bark, but his nails were clicking at the front door. So he's clicking away, and his nails are clicking, and he thinks somebody's at the door, and he's excited. And I come down later to my car, because I was getting ready to leave, and the cop starts chewing me out that she heard me at the door, and I didn't answer the door, and you always need to answer the door to the police officer, and just started flipping out. And I had no idea what was going on until later I figured out my dog got me in trouble.
I had a similar situation. I had a cop show up at my house. I thought it was the FedEx guy. And on the next episode, we'll talk about that story. This is the Red Podcast. Red stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. This is the podcast for authors, speakers, and coaches. We'll help you expand your influence, reach more people with your message, and make more money doing what you love. We'll show you how to build a successful personality-based business and live life on your terms. You know, you and I, we said we'd never work together. And here we are, episode 128.
I know. We must have gone crazy somewhere down the line.
Do you remember how Red Podcast started?
I do. It was over dinner one night.
Over dinner one night, took Laurel out. I don't know what we were working on. We were like, let's go out. Let's get out of here.
We're like normal people. We go out to dinner. Yeah.
And we needed a break. We were working on your new book. You spent a lot of last year writing a book. And we were looking for a way to launch that book. And somebody had the idea, well, why don't we start a podcast? Who was it? You or me?
I don't know. It was both of us simultaneously.
Yeah. We're like, all right, that sounds like a great idea. So over dinner, had the idea for Red. That's how I started my big music conference over dinner. Just guys hanging out at pizza. The next thing we knew, the next week, we were in business.
Did you write it down on a napkin?
Napkin contract.
And napkin ideas.
So here we are about 8 months in to Red as of today. We had never worked together. We lived together. We had worked on separate projects where we'd helped each other out. You'd used my brilliant marketing mind.
Ditto. It's true. We had never worked together. And I think when we first met, we made it very clear that we don't want to work together. That was something you and I both said, was we always want to have our own thing. And that was very early on, I remember. And then when we came up with the idea for Red, it seemed like a good idea. And we dove into it pretty fast after we came up with it. But we're not working together in a huge capacity. We're just basically doing the podcast and some group programs.
We've got a group coaching thing that has resulted from Red, and that kind of happened organically.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing what we know now, a little bit different from what we knew back then. We actually had an episode of Red, episode number 17, which is at redpodcast.com/17, about how to get your spouse on board. But we've been thinking a lot about this. As I mentioned, a lot of opportunities have presented themselves as far as doing some more things together. So I went to several entrepreneur spouse couples, and I asked them, how are you successfully working together? And there were two common threads that I heard. One, that this has brought us closer together. It's actually been good for our relationship. Of course, these are only the successful people that I'm asking. We don't know how many divorces have happened because of this.
Mm-hmm.
Also, though, a clear division of responsibility. And that is absolutely something we've had with Red Podcast. You want to talk about just how we divide stuff here?
Sure.
You want to talk about how it used to be and how it is now?
Yeah, why not?
All right.
Well, I think we came into this thinking 50-50. Like, you'll do 50% of the work to get read out, and I'll do 50% of the work to get read out. And that didn't last very long. I think you really had to take the head on this one because, one, I was doing other stuff, and two, I didn't want to make every single decision with you. That was a challenge.
Well, part of it is I came in from a broadcasting background and had more experience with this kind of thing. Although you had a successful podcast before this.
Yes.
It wasn't like you were completely brand new to it. It's more in my wheelhouse.
It's true.
How it actually works is I come up with a topic, come up with a basic outline. I review the outline with you before we start rolling tape. I edit. You do all the graphic design. And I think that's about it, right? I do all the interviews.
Mm-hmm.
So this, in a lot of ways, is a David project supported by you.
I'm just the talent.
I couldn't do it without you.
I know.
I couldn't do it without you. And I think that's something to keep in mind when you do have partnerships is that partner, even at maybe 20%, is enabling the entire project to be that 100% that you need.
It is. And I think 50-50 sounds nice, but it just didn't work for us. And you got to dive in and figure out what works just for you. And we tried it and we modified it and we figured out something that does work for us.
Well, we talked about the group coaching program, which is something that is an offshoot of Red. Now, that is not a 50-50 thing. That's more 80-20 with me taking 20 of that.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the pros and cons that we have for working together. Just really quickly before we dive into what other people have told us about working together. What would you say maybe one con of working together is, David?
Well, I got to be married to you.
Is that a con? Oh, dear. We're in trouble.
Well, what I mean by that is that you're working, you shut work off, but you're still living with that person.
So it's like we're never turning off.
Well, you have an opportunity to never turn off.
Mm-hmm.
It would be very easy to slip into that.
I think that's true. I think when we're talking about business all the time, it gets a little overwhelming that we don't talk about other stuff. Got to set some boundaries there. I think one of the cons for me is working with you is I'm a type A person, and I don't even know if you have a type. You're the freewheeling type.
The free range boss.
The free range boss. So I think for me, just working with somebody that isn't my anal type of person has been challenging. And
explain what you mean by that. So you'll tell me, all right, we're going to start rolling tape at 3:00, for example.
Yeah, and we don't start till 5.
It's not that bad.
It's pretty bad. So for me, that like I have deadlines. I want to get something done by a certain date, or I want to record at a certain time, or I have structure and I write out my schedule a week in advance. And I'm very time oriented and I'm very task oriented and I like deadlines and I like all that stuff. And you don't work like that at all, like not at all. And I think for us that's why we couldn't do the 50-50 because we really couldn't come up with the deadlines that we were going to hit. And I was getting stressed out. So we had to figure out something that would work for both our personalities because it's not that one is better than the other, but when you're working with somebody that is totally opposite of you in the way you work, it can be a con and can cause a stress. So you have to figure out how to make that work for you. With that said, what's a pro for you, David?
Well, as far as getting the podcast done, it's very nice to live with your host. I know where you are, I can round you up, make the schedule happen.
It's true.
All right, what's a pro for you?
Pro for me is being able to work with somebody who really understands what it's like to be an entrepreneur. Because I have friends that work 9-to-5 jobs and really just, they're supportive of me, but they don't get what I'm doing. They don't understand what I'm going through on a daily basis. And I think it's been fun to work with you on this level because we both understand the work that has to go into it. We both appreciate what the other person does because we know that it's hard. And you also get what I'm trying to do and you get what I'm bringing to the table. And I think that's really great. And in a way that does bring us closer together.
In general, I think that's the best thing about being in a relationship with another entrepreneur. For example, scheduling vacations or scheduling time off. We are not ruled by work or government holidays. We can take off whenever we want to. So it's nice to have somebody that understands that. For example, on Labor Day, we don't have to feel that we have got to get our vacation in. We can hang out at home because we can take it the day after Labor Day.
Which is pretty awesome.
So I talked to dozens of people to research this episode, which is going to be a two-parter. John Olson from Greystone Industries, he had some great advice. He says, we've discovered that taking a daily walk together around our property has relaxed us. It allows us to go over frustrations and opportunities that we've each had that day, as well as giving us some great time to talk about the kids and school. These walks have been both great exercise as well as great low-pressure business meetings. They brought us closer together as a couple, and that's pretty amazing by itself. I wanted to lead with this one because you and I have something similar, especially when it's really warm weather. Love to take evening walks around the neighborhood just as kind of that off switch that says we're no longer working, we're getting more into personal mode.
I absolutely agree. When you can walk and talk through a problem or talk through the day or talk through something, as he said, it's kind of a low pressure business meeting. I love that because walking is something that helps you. I don't know if it's subconscious or something. It just helps you work through something. And it's not like you're sitting there and you're both face to face and you're trying to figure it out. You're moving together. It's kind of symbolic, I think.
Well, it is symbolic, but there's also something about burning that energy. I read something in a psychology book once. If you want to get connected with a male teen, do something physical with him because he's got that energy that has to burn off. And I think it's the same way with entrepreneurs. Not that we're like a 15-year-old boy, but we do have that type of energy where we're going, and it's nice to be able to shut that off, and it's nice to have that off-ramp, kind of that reset switch through a walk. It doesn't have to be walking. It could be maybe another physical activity.
Mm-hmm. But I think being able to have a recap about your day and look at the positives or work through something, it's really helpful to be able to do that. So I'm glad that John brought that up because that's something that works for us. Alina Adams of Alina Adams Media, she says, don't take a professional criticism personally. It's easier said than done, but very true. She says, don't make a personal favor contingent on a professional one. For example, I'll take out the garbage if you finish up that file you need to code. On the other hand, I've taken the kids out of the house on a weekend so that my husband could buckle down and get some work done without distractions. It's a delicate balance.
It is a delicate balance. I've talked on one of my solo episodes for Red Podcast about working at a modeling agency and seeing the models that would come in that would get some pretty harsh criticism, especially when you consider that it's not about their work, it's literally about them. And I think that a lot of people can take criticism in that way. For example, something like a podcast. And you know what I'm going to do at the end of this episode? I'm going to put on some of these as an outtake where you said, David, stop reading. David, you're going too fast. You can't take it personally. But we've got some unedited tape. I'll show you how I react to that. I didn't blow up. I just read it slower.
Okay, but also you're very zen. I don't know if everyone out there, including myself, is that zen. I think the advice is really good. I think it's something you have to work on. But David, you have an amazing ability to not take anything personally. So that's really helpful for me.
Well, it's something that you can work on. That's the point. I wasn't always like this.
Well, I didn't know
I was the
back
guy,
in the day.
if you listen to the early Red podcast about where I quit my day job, and I think it's 6 and 7 where we tell our stories, I was the guy who went off on a woman for moving my chair at work. And that's the last day I worked a day job. You can't imagine me doing that now, but I had to work on this.
True. So I think it's good advice, and I think it's something you have to work on for yourself. Your partner can't work on not giving you feedback. You have to work on how you accept that feedback.
She has great demarcation here when she says, don't make a personal favor contingent on a professional one. I think that's great.
Have we ever done that?
I don't think so, but I can relate to her leaving the house so her spouse can get more work done because you're asking for me to leave the house. Like, Are you sure you don't want to go to that convention?
I know. I'm kind of forcing you to go to the convention just so I can have some space to do what I do. Our house is plenty big. We have a big house, but it's hard when two people are working in the house and living in the house 24/7. It's good to get a break.
Let's talk about that just for a second. House is about 3,200 square feet, which at this day and age, that's considered, kind of an average house, I guess, right? But I basically have the top floor. The top floor is more or less all business. We have a meeting room. We have the podcast studio. We've got my office up there, and you work in the downstairs. So we don't see each other all the time. Not like we're working in the same room, although going up and down the stairs during the day, I absolutely run into you. And that's something we also have to watch out for, so I don't interrupt you.
That kind of brings us to what John Bodrozic is saying. You want to read his?
Yeah, John's from a company called HomeZada. They're at homezada.com. He says, have separate workspaces so each party can work without the other being around. Also, minimize the interruptions. Each party has work to do, so schedule meetings as opposed to constant interruptions.
I love that.
Yeah, that's something we really need to work on.
We are working on that.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, it's hard because my office is on the way to the kitchen. So you come down the stairs, you pass by my office and go to the kitchen, and either you have something to ask me or I have something to ask you. And it's hard to figure out, okay, do we need to actually set up a meeting to do that? Or do we do it at the end of the day? I think it's been a real challenge to find that balance for us.
And there are little household things that you don't think about because they're so quick, but they are interruptions, such as, hey, have you fed the dog?
Mm-hmm.
It's throwing you off your game. You've got to take a minute to get back into it. And sometimes we'll get into a conversation at a point like that.
Yeah.
So it's a fine line, but I feel like a jerk when I walk by your office and don't say anything. I'm a good Southern man. Got that Southern hospitality thing going.
Well, we don't want to ignore each other, but we don't want to constantly interrupt each other. So where is that balance? I think it's something we're always striving for and we're thinking about and we talk about, but it hasn't been super easy, I'd say. But I like that having the separate workspaces, we do that. That is absolutely critical. Working in the same office with you, I would not have lasted this long. And minimizing the interruptions, I think that's good. It's hard to get interrupted. Anna Copley of pickleballcentral.com, she says, divide and conquer. David, her partner, has authority over certain parts of our business, financials, ordering paddles, HR.
Whoa. Ordering paddles?
They're pickleball.
Okay.
Have you ever played
I
pickleball?
thought it was like 50 Shades of pickleball, maybe.
No.
No, I've never played pickleball.
Get your mind out of the gutter. And
All right,
we'll
go
finish.
ahead. Go
Okay. And she continues to say, and I have authority over other parts, website design and content, social media, email campaigns, photography, apparel. Of course, we both have opinions about everything, but whoever is responsible for an area has ultimate decision-making power.
Agreed. For example, Red, being that I had the background in broadcasting when it came to getting the equipment for the studio, you just let me handle that. But I think that also provides space to you because you know that it's handled. It's less for you to worry about. You can focus on what you do the best. And same for me. So sometimes letting somebody else handle it, it's a great feeling. If you're that type A personality, though, that likes to micromanage or get into every little thing, that may be difficult.
You have to trust the other person to know what they're doing and do it. For instance, you handle the editing and things like that and getting the microphones, but I handle the website and don't have to run everything by you. But if you have an opinion about it, we can talk about it. But in the end, it's like I'm the design person and you're the audio person. So that's just kind of how it balances out.
This is great advice for when you're hiring employees as well. Just hire the best people. That's all you can do. Trust them to make the decision. And that's not always going to happen. Sometimes people make mistakes, as anybody would. Just make sure it doesn't happen again. Let them learn from it.
But I love the dividing and conquering here because if you're trying to handle every little thing, you're not giving your partner any credit and any opportunity to bring anything to the table. So even if you're type A like me, you really have to let go of some stuff. And that's been a process for me, just to let go, let you do it on your own time and not worry about it. I think you got to chill out if you're a type A.
I'm going to sample that right there.
Just chill out if you're a type. Well, it's hard. You're not a type A, so you don't know what I'm going through, but it's hard when you want everything to be perfect and everything to be right and yours and on time and deadlines and all of that. And maybe it's not like that, but that doesn't mean it's bad just because it's not your way. And dividing and conquering helps you take control of your stuff and do it to the best of your ability, and let your partner do the same for their stuff. It's just going to make things run a lot smoother, and something that's, again, a process. We're working on, all these couples are working on their own stuff. And as long as you keep communicating, keep the conversation about it going, you're going to get to where you want to go.
We're going to continue the conversation on the next episode. I'm also going to be talking about what happened when a cop showed up at my door and I didn't answer. If you have any questions or comments, reach out to us. redpodcast.com is where to get us. You will find all past episodes. You'll be able to reach out directly with episode suggestions, comments, any questions that you have. We've got an app, Laurel.
Love the app.
App is great. It's an easy way to get Red Podcast right to your mobile phone. There's an Android version on the Google Play App Store and also Amazon App Store. We've got one in the Apple App Store for iPhone. If you like that, just search for Real Entrepreneur Development and download it free. And while you're there, leave us a review. That will help us to come up more frequently in the search engines. And when more people find us, we can build a bigger Real Entrepreneur community. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you on the next episode where we'll continue the conversation about how to successfully work with your spouse.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.
RED stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. This is the podcast for authors, speakers, and coaches. We'll help you to expand your influence, reach more people with your message, and make more money doing what you love.
I'm going to have you do all that again. You're reading. You're going really quickly through the sentences. So just say it like you would, just like you're telling me about it. So tell me what the Red Podcast is, David.
What are we listening to? You got to do it like that.
What are we listening to?
That's how we do it in voiceover.
What are we listening to, David?
What are we going to talk about, David? All right, here we go. RED. RED stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. This is the podcast for authors, speakers, and coaches. We'll help you to expand your influence, reach more people with your message, and make money. Shit.
You were close. Say and make money.
Got to start the whole phrase again. RED stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. Well, yeah.
You want me to do it?
Nope.
Okay.
RED. This is the Red Podcast. While you're there, leave us a review. That helps us to... And while you're there,
leave us a... No. Okay.
You want to do it?
No. I was just trying to throw you off.